Ultra-nationalist Israelis are marching through occupied East Jerusalem as part of their so-called Flag Day celebrations. It marks Israel's illegal occupation of the area after the 1967 war. Crowds have made incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. In recent years, thousands of people have joined the march through the city, waving flags and chanting racist slogans. These are the latest pictures from inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. It shows Israeli forces detaining a Palestinian man. Well, just a reminder, Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel, which is why we're joined by Sara Khairat in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Sara, good to see you. Not an easy day to be a Palestinian in occupied East Jerusalem, especially given Israel's war in Gaza. I believe we can show you some of the latest pictures coming to us from Damascus Gate in occupied East Jerusalem. There you can see this is in the last sort of 10 minutes or so. Sarah, remind us why this is such a contentious day for so many Palestinians.
Well, as you said there, you're seeing them outside Damascus Gate. That is the main gate. It's one of several entrances into the old city. And it's also been a flashpoint historically for violence from far-right, ultra-nationalist youth movements, as well as settlers, Israeli settlers. And this time they're going through as one of the pathways through the Muslim quarters, where a lot of the Palestinian shopkeepers are. People go and buy their fruit, they buy their clothes from there as Palestinians. And we've already seen violence in the last few hours. A lot of journalists were attacked, including local Israeli journalists, as well as activists that had been attacked by some of those young settlers. You can see they're very young, some of them as young as 9 and 10, and mostly teenagers. They've also been chanting some really racist and insightful slogans, saying death to the Arabs, and that also they refer to Palestinians as that. And also, if I take you back to 2021, this was the precursor, that flag march, which ended up in a war where Israel had attacked Hamas, and that was because Hamas had fired rockets angry at this flag march. It's also a symbolic, really, especially with what's going on, the occupation that Palestinians, especially in occupied East Jerusalem, as well as the occupied West Bank, are living under. Just to give you a sense of how it is for Palestinians. For example, today, many Palestinians have been arrested, and often it's because they are trying to protect their shops. They're trying to protect their produce and the things they are selling from vandalism by these Israelis. But also, you see that they are often stopped from entering into the old city, especially if they're young male Palestinians. And given the context of this war, Israeli forces have been massively clamping down, especially at a time when you have far-right ministers like Itamar Ben-Gvir speaking on local radio this morning, encouraging Israelis to turn up and join this march. Tens of thousands of Israelis usually take part, waving the flags. It's not clear how many are going to be turning up today, but one would expect a lot of them will, especially as this sense of nationalism is happening during this war on Gaza.
And Sarah, I just want to remind our viewers, normally you would be at the march reporting for Al Jazeera, but because Al Jazeera has been banned from inside Israel by the Netanyahu government, you are reporting in Jordan. Okay, let's take a closer look at the history of Jerusalem. Back in 1949, at the end of the Arab-Israeli War, the city was divided into two areas. West Jerusalem had been Israeli territory since 1948, and the majority of people who lived there were Jews. East Jerusalem and its majority Palestinian population came under Jordanian rule. But in 1967, Israel captured East Jerusalem along with the rest of the West Bank after the Arab-Israeli War of 1967. More than 300,000 Palestinians were displaced. East Jerusalem is still occupied by Israel, while Palestinians demand it should be their future capital. Meanwhile, in the rest of the occupied West Bank, illegal Israeli settlements account for about 40% of the area. Israel has built over 340 illegal settlements and outposts since 1967, effectively cutting off Palestinian communities. Let's speak now to Sapir Sluzker Amran. She's an activist and a human rights lawyer. She joins us now from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for your time. How provocative a move is this, do you think, to allow this flag march to take place today, given what's happening in Gaza?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think it's always provocative and doing it for years. But this year, I think there's a direct intention to set fire. So I think Ben-Gvir and the rest of the right-wing extremist ministers, what they're doing right now is to try to do as much as they can by any means to stop the hostage deal and to stop the ceasefire promoted by Biden and others, and the demanding of the Israeli society to stop the war. And I think they're using this parade and they're using the route going inside the Mosque gate, inside the old city, confronting and using violence against Palestinians to escalate the situation so they will have an excuse to continue the war. And we can see that they're doing it by morning. And I know that Ben-Gvir announced that he's going to, even though it's not part of the route of the parade, they're going to insist of going to Al-Aqsa and pray there, which is to say that by the way that I see religion and by Sephardic rabbis, the leading Sephardic rabbis, it is forbidden for Jews right now to go and pray in Al-Aqsa. And they're still doing it because they can, and they consider themselves as the landlords, as they say. So they came to prove a lesson to the Palestinians right now today.
So the point you're making is, I mean, Jerusalem has stayed relatively calm, I would say, in comparison to other parts of the country over the recent period. So the aim is here of the far right to deliberately to raise tensions in this part of the area.
Yeah, and they're saying it clearly. They're saying we want to show them that we're in charge. We want to show them that we are the landlords. It's because we were quiet and didn't do all kinds of actions in Jerusalem, in other cities, in order to not escalate the situation. This fact became the escalation of the situation. So now they're saying we need to be harder, to use more force and more violence, and to show that we are the landlords, as they say, for that will be any kind of clashes, and then the attention will go to the clashes in Jerusalem instead of talking about the war, the hostage deal, and instead of talking about how this right-wing extremist government is the worst government that was ever been in Israel, and talking about the protest against it right now by Israelis.
You mentioned that ceasefire deal, which is currently on the table, presented by the US president a few days ago. How do you feel the majority of Israelis actually view this deal? Do the majority of them actually want this war to end, or do they support the government's narrative, which is it can't end until Hamas is completely destroyed?
I think people understand now, when the war started, there was all these slogans in Tel Aviv, in all over Israel, a big sign saying, we will win together. Now, after eight months, people started saying, we're not going to win this war. There's not going to be any chance that we're going to win, because no one can win in a war, actually. But in this specific war, we already lost in 17 October. And what we're doing right now is going again to Gaza, to places that were occupied before by the army, when soldiers were killed there and hostages were killed there. And then Hamas took over these places again, and now they're fighting again, and there are more soldiers dying again in the same territory. And I think more people are realizing it now, and realizing that they can't count on this government to lead them politically. And I think more people, including families of the hostages, including people that used to support the right wing or still supporting right wing, saying this war is for the existence, not of the Jewish nation, it's for the continue and sustainability and existence of the right wing government. And talking about the hostage deal, Ben-Gvir and the rest of his political party, they announced that they are objecting the hostage deal, they're objecting of finishing the war and to ceasefire, and they will leave the government. And if they will leave the coalition, that means that we will go to an election. So this is the political situation right now on the table, and I think even Biden said it in a way
Okay.
that he thinks that it's for the government. And just to say, for me, I don't want to be a landlord. I want to live here in equality with the Palestinians here. I don't want to be the landlord. I know that there are people that are protesting, Israelis, against those actions today. And I hope that more people will join us. And I really hope that we will be in a position that we can talk about a different future and not just to talk about this ongoing war and the minister of death promoting it.
Okay, I appreciate your time and speaking to us on Al Jazeera. Sapir Sluzker Amran, activist and human rights lawyer, speaking to us there from Tel Aviv.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.